Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And, they talk about Santa Anita having a beautiful backdrop to the racetrack, but it's pretty hard to beat this in the morning. Was that gorgeous out there this morning? I mean, that's just really one of the great things about Saratoga, just coming out and watching these beautiful animals go through their paces in the morning. It's just great stuff. Hope and welcome back to day two, and hope you enjoyed the libations and food last night at the Holiday Inn. We want to thank our, they have so many different events here at Saratoga, a lot of charity events, many horse racing related events, and just about every one, Stone Street Stable sponsors the wine. They've given out more wine, and they're part of Stone Street is Kendall Jackson Winery. So Barbara Banke, she's just terrific, and she's got a few terrific horses, Curlin among them. And Naira was also the co-sponsor last night, and they've been very generous with their time and everything with our conference this year. I was talking to, and I hope you did get a chance to socialize last night. I was talking to one of the attendees here, and she was saying, I love horse racing, but the thing I like about it most are the owners and people that own horses and stuff. I said, why is that? She goes, they're just like me. They love to eat, drink, and gamble. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. But anyway, I hope you were able to, if you didn't get any gambling in last night, at least eat and drink. But the real best thing about owning a thoroughbred is the ultimate experience is winning a race. And I had the ultimate experience by being part owner of a horse that won a race called the Kentucky Derby. I was a part owner. I owned probably just about 3 hairs on his mane, but I was a part owner of Always Dreaming, and I'm pretty sure that I was the only person that had ever called a Kentucky Derby and that actually owned a horse that won the Kentucky Derby. But I really didn't see him win it, sort of. So I want you to think back to the start of that Derby when Always Dreaming was on. The mud was this deep in the track that day. And there was a horse called Thunder Snow from the Middle East who came over to run. And he probably never even saw mud in his life, let alone run on it, let alone run on mud in front of 150,000 mint julep infused maniacs. So they spring open the gate, and Thunder Snow has a fit. He puts his feet down, splashes up and down, he bucks the jockey off, and now he's running loose on the track. I don't know if you remember this or not, right at the start of the Derby, he's running loose without a jockey. And so the outrider, I didn't see this because I was in the tunnel that leads from the track to the paddock. I was in the paddock and I didn't have time to go up to the seats with all the people there, 150,000 mint julep infused maniacs. And so I watched the race from the tunnel that goes from the paddock to the track, and I watched it on a TV. And so the outrider has to go get Thunder Snow. And all of a sudden there's this huge commotion. I don't know what's going on. People running in different directions, and in comes this outrider with this horse and rein in tow. The horse's eyes are as big as plates. He's got these big teeth, and I'm afraid of horses. I'm allergic to horses, and I don't really like being around them. I love them in my own way, believe me, but I love them through binoculars. This horse comes in, and everybody's screaming, they're running around, what's going on? And here comes this big horse, and I'm pinned, he pins me up against the wall. He's got his butt pinning me up against the wall. I go, wow, I'm gonna die watching the Kentucky Derby. And so finally, the outrider pulls him out of the way, takes him to safety in the paddock, And I go, oh my God, oh, thank God. In the meantime, I've forgotten they're running the Kentucky Derby. And the girl I'm standing next to, I go, oh, and then I realized, oh yeah, the race. I go, where's Always Dreaming? They're at the 8th pole. Tommy's in front. Oh! So I'm wearing this beautiful white silk suit with my big Panama straw hat, white tie. I look beautiful. And I'm one of those 150,000 mint julep infused maniacs at this time of day. The horse wins. By the way, I am a great loser. Lose a race, fine. I am the worst winner you ever saw in your life. Chest pounding, oh, that was me, like I did the running. So I go out on the track and I'm literally jumping up and down. I won the Derby, I take my hat off and I'm slamming it down and I'm making a complete spectacle of myself. I'm full of mud. Take the picture. Now I realize, how do I get back to the hotel? This is the first time I've ever gone to the Kentucky Derby where I didn't have a driver who would drive me up to the elevator, get me down, and take me back to the hotel. Well, I guess I'll take a cab. So I'm stumbling back. You have to walk a mile to where the cabs are, and there's this big, long line. It's like the ultimate TSA line, only it's like gonna take you 2 hours. And here I am with this hat all over the place, full of mud. And there are some attractive young ladies in front of me. I'm going, this is okay. This is a captive audience. They ain't going nowhere for 2 hours. Just be cool. So, I strike up a conversation with them. And again, I'm one of those 150,000 mint julep infused maniacs at this point. And I said, who'd you have in the Derby? We bet a couple of horses. Blah, 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 blah. How about you? Who'd you have? And here I'm standing there full of mud in a line with thousands of other people waiting for a cab. And I go, well, I actually owned that horse. Yeah, sure. So the conversation dies down. And don't worry, be cool. We still got another hour in this line. You still got a shot. And so I re-engaged them in conversation slowly. And they said, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I'm retired now, but I used to be the guy that called the Kentucky Derby on television. That's it. You are out of your mind, mister. We finally get to the front of the line. They go, we're going to the Galt House, to the cab driver. And I said, that's my hotel too. Do you mind if I come with you? No. But, when you win the Kentucky Derby, it is a thrill. But it turned out to be a little more thrilling than I really thought it would be. Just a few things to remember for today. Don't forget, everything's on the back side of your credentials, so you know exactly what's going to be happening. Don't forget your conference magazine. Read all those articles in there. A lot of great stuff. And in the back, there's a list of the sponsors who are anxious for you to engage them. That's why they're there. And if you have any questions about the conference, about the 1863 Club, or anything like that, as I mentioned yesterday, our people that have those stars, gold stars on their credentials, are attendants, and they're here to answer any questions you have. As I mentioned yesterday, they know the name of the unknown soldier, and I think more appropriately, they probably know the numbers of tonight's $810 million Mega Millions draw, so pay attention to them. And a big thank you to our conference hosts, Owner View, and the Blood Horse, the Jockey Club, and TOBA, Thoroughbred Owners of America. And our thanks to our presenting sponsor again, the New York Racing Association. They've really gone out of their way this year to make this conference work as well as it is. So our first panel is about the future of thoroughbred racing. We've had a great past, and Saratoga is living testimony to that, but the future belongs to the younger generation, their friends and families and acquaintances that are going to make this business go in the decades to come. And right now, we'd like to let you know about our sponsor for this segment is string music. By the way, string music has got nothing to do with violins or cellos or anything like that. String music was a catchphrase for a famous basketball announcer, Joe Dean. And probably people old enough in the room to remember a guy named Pistol Pete Maravich, who could, he could sink a basketball from, a mile away. And we used to call it, in Chicago, we used to call it a swisheroo. And but Joe Dean would say every time Pistol Pete hit a nothing but net, he goes, string music, string music. So that's the name of our sponsor here. And they brought together experts over 100 years of thoroughbred industry experience to meet the needs of people with a passion for the sport of kings. If you're ready to segue into thoroughbred ownership or are seeking new connections after years of ownership, then string music has just what you're looking for. How do we make the magic of string music come to life for our partners? Well, from purchasing yearlings to breaking and training in Ocala, we take your thoroughbred athletes through the paces to ensure that as a 2-year-old, they're going to be race ready. String Music Thoroughbred Investments, providing our partners with an exhilarating experience in the world of racing. So now to the business at hand. To talk about the next generation, please give a warm welcome to, there's so many seasoner names, I just have to read it, Acacia Courtney Clement. There you are, all right.
Thanks very much, Tom. Really looking forward to today's panel. It's something I've been excited about since I found out I would have the pleasure of moderating. As we well know, and as we hear a lot in the conversation in today's industry, the sport needs a combination of experienced owners and some new fans, owners, people getting involved in the sport, the next generation, so to speak. And today's panel is really made up of my peers, which I think will be really fun and really exciting to be part of. It's people that have put together syndicates with their college friends, become young leaders in new organizations, and really getting a chance to hear their experiences and how they've grown and broken into this industry. So let's meet today's panelists. We'll bring them right out, starting with, first up, a woman who has grown up in the thoroughbred industry and now works for her father at Bradley Thoroughbreds, representing a set of clients in the purchase and sale of thoroughbreds at public auction and through private acquisitions. Please welcome to the stage, Devon Bradley. Whichever one you like. Our next panelist graduated from Brown University with a BA in Business Entrepreneurship and a minor in Environmental Engineering. He has committed a significant time to his entrepreneurial venture, co-founding and managing Boat Racing LLC. You might have heard of them, or at least heard them at the racetrack, a thoroughbred horse racing syndicate where the most recent purchase, Hot Rod Charlie, ran in the Kentucky Derby in May of 2021. Please welcome Patrick O'Neill. Growing up, attending racetracks in both Florida and New York, he followed his passion for thoroughbred racing to working in the industry, first at NYRA and now as the executive director of the New York Thoroughbred Breeders Organization. Please join me in welcoming Naja Thompson. And finally, this Kentucky native grew up within the racing industry where her exposure to racing syndication and partnerships were honed via her parents managing Starlight and Star Ladies Racing. She's joined the family business as Starlight Racing's marketing and bloodstock assistant and is currently a student of Godolphin Flying Start program. Please welcome to the stage Elinor Wolf. Some great panelists with great backgrounds and a lot to share about breaking into the thoroughbred industry. So we'll get started. Maybe we'll kind of go this way to begin, and then from then on, anybody can just chime in as you have opinions. So the first question is, how did you get involved in racing? And if a family member was already involved, were you encouraged to pursue that profession, or were you tried to steer away from the family business?
Well, Acacia, thanks so much for having us this morning. First and foremost, what a beautiful place we're in. Saratoga Springs, New York. It doesn't get much better than this. I guess to start, I grew up in a racing family. My dad is originally from California, came to Kentucky, and sort of worked his way up the ladder. I was not encouraged necessarily to get into the thoroughbred industry. I went to college, played college soccer, economics major, got a finance job, and found all I was doing was spending my money to go to horse races all over the country. And at that point, I took a step back after about 3 years and said, maybe this is what I want to do. Decided to work on the racetrack for a while. I worked for a guy named Shug McGahee. You might have heard of him. And stayed with him for about 4 years, ended up being his traveling assistant, and then came back and started working with my dad, and have been there for about 4 years as well. So, combo of both.
I have a little bit of a unique kind of journey into horse racing, and so unfortunately, like the rest of this panel, I do not spend a majority of my time or kind of Monday through Fridays focused on horse racing, although I'd love to. I got in the sport via family, very much like Devon. Unfortunately as well, my grandfather loved gambling, and we all know it's a big part of the sport, but unfortunately he wasn't a very good gambler. And so he actually, at one point in time, lost my family on my dad's side a couple houses. I promise the story gets a lot better. But he had 4 boys, one being my dad, who was the oldest, and obviously my dad having that experience wasn't very into the ponies. But fortunately, my grandfather had 3 other sons, and the youngest 2 absolutely fell in love with the sport. And they didn't really know that their beds and their bedrooms were getting smaller over the years, but all they could see was when they were brought to the track, how fun and amazing these horses were, how majestic they are, this incredible community, and just had the time of their lives. And so immediately after high school, both Doug and Dennis O'Neill, who are my uncles, one being a trainer, one being a bloodstock agent, respectively, went pretty much to what they call Hollywood Park University or Santa Anita College right after high school. And so I got to see both of them rise from running in, which is a great track, by the way, but $4,000 claimers at Bay Meadows, all the way to winning the Kentucky Derby in 2012 with All Have Another. And then obviously Lava Man prior to that, and then Nyquist shortly thereafter in 2016. And so I saw that rise, and for myself, I fell in love from the very first time I saw a horse. We like to joke that I was pretty much born into a stall. Funny story, my mom's Hawaiian, so my dad actually, when I was 9 years old, moved us out to Hawaii, and a big portion of that was actually to get away from the races. But obviously I'm here today, and it's my passion. And so fast forward a couple years, barely go to college, barely graduate from college, but meet some of the best people in my life today. And we end up, falling apart a little bit. After college, everybody in this room knows you have the 4 best years of your life, and then things change. You get into your careers, you get significant others, and kind of life goes in a different path. And so we said to each other, we need to find a way to spend more time together. And we used horse racing as that medium. And so we actually all got together at Del Mar for Labor Day weekend. If you guys can make it out, we'd obviously love to have you out west. Come to Del Mar. It's absolutely incredible. But I had the best time of our lives. Every reason that my grandfather fell in love with the sport, my uncles did, we fell in love with the sport. And so we came up with this crazy idea to create a syndicate together with 4 of my best friends from college. And I was absolutely nervous, right? You never want to get into the game with your loved ones because of financial ramifications. But we saw the upside, and if we did it the right way, we felt like this is a game that if you focus on experiences, memories, and the horses, it will pay back in dividends. And we didn't have success in the beginning. I can tell you it wasn't an easy journey at the beginning, and then we somehow found gold in Hot Rod Charlie shortly thereafter, and it's been the absolute ride of a lifetime, whether 94-1 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, somehow being fortunate to be talking to Acacia at, big time races or being on NBC. But this game has pretty much given me my entire life, my family, happiness, my friends. I love these animals again, and honestly, it's given me a significant other, so I'm just very, very blessed in a lot of ways. So definitely a unique journey into horse racing.
Yes, likewise to Devon and Patrick. My family was a connection to horse racing. My uncle was a bettor and then turned on to become a breeder. So it was always that family introduction of going to races. I grew up with win photos. If you look at my baby pictures and toddler photos, there are NYRA calendars and OTB calendars in the background. And, it was always, having that introduction and, of course, going to the racetrack and experiencing, top class racing, and that great experience just stuck with me. And after college and university, I worked in the business world at Verizon for a little bit and kind of struggling, working your way up, and not really your passion, but of course paying the bills and student loans. But my uncle suggested to me, why don't you pursue a career in horse racing? You love the sport, there's opportunities, you have good connections, a good background, see what you can make of it. So I was in Florida at the time, and my dad said, I'll give you 2 years. You can go to New York. We have there's an apartment we have up there. You can stay there, make the best of it, see what becomes of it. I was able to catch on with NYRA, and it's been one great ride since. 10 years at NYRA, currently with the New York Thoroughbred Breeders, and it all started because of that family connection, and of course the thrill and love that we all have for our sport and industry.
And for me, my parents first joined the racing industry in 2001, so I've basically grown up as since a little girl. And one of my fondest memories is coming to Saratoga Racecourse and being in the paddock and watching these amazing athletes gallivanting around and choosing usually the pink horse, as what I used to recall as the number 8, if you will. So I wasn't very good at gambling, let's put it that way. But my parents, they always encouraged me to, pursue my passion. And I was a Division I lacrosse player at University of Colorado and fell in love with advertising and marketing. And, they wanted me to pursue that, and they definitely pushed me to do so. But at the end of the graduation, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I want to be in the horse racing business. I can't see myself doing anything else. So I applied to the Irish National Stud Course and moved to Kildare, Ireland, without ever working a breeding season, which was very interesting. I fell in love with the foals and how you rear them to become amazing thoroughbreds on the racetrack, which you see behind you. And that's kind of how I got into it. And I'm very happy that they pushed me to be outside of racing, but I'm always going to come back.
Always sucks you back in, doesn't it? Yeah, I tried to. I think we've all tried at one point. And Patrick, maybe this question would be best starting with you, because you mentioned the ride with Hot Rod Charlie. Some of the memories, some of the experiences, of course there's ups and downs in racing, but what's something that really stands out to you, and a question for all of you as well, as a really strong memory that you're going to keep with you that you've had through the sport?
It's a great question. I've had so many blessed memories in horse racing. I think to start with, certainly when Doug won his first Grade 1 with Skyjack in 2002, it was a horse by Jacqueline Klugman, if everyone remembers that sire. They bought for like $30,000 via claiming, and he made it and won the Pacific Classic in 2002. So just seeing my uncle on that rise and having the families get into the winner's circle, I'll never forget that moment. I certainly saw my dad cry for the first time, so that was definitely memorable. And then there's nothing like, and it's obviously a very, very easy thing to say, but there's nothing like winning the Kentucky Derby. So when Doug won the Kentucky Derby in 2012 at 16-1 with Well Have Another, it didn't seem real. I definitely remember hugging my entire family, hugging my grandma, who they almost didn't let in the winner's circle, crazy. But we definitely got her in, she made it. She was right in the front. She definitely made it. But, that was an incredible experience because you just never think that that moment's going to ever happen. I just remember all having another turning for home, and I think we all just blacked out. And yes, we had a little bit of tequila that day, but I think it was for other reasons. And then finally, just as Acacia mentioned, Hot Rod Charlie, the fact that, and I was talking to Jack in the Saratoga group last night, and the fact that you can have a sport and bring so many people together all based on one animal is absolutely, it's hard to put into words. And so again, I see all these horses behind us, and all I want to do is just look at them and thank them because they've given us everything. And so every time we see Hot Rod Charlie, we definitely, love on him, give him carrots. If we could, we give him a beer because he certainly deserves a ton. So definitely between Skyjack, I'll Have Another, and Hot Rod Charlie.
I think for me, probably the most exciting moment in horse racing was actually when I was a direct competitor to a Bradley Thoroughbreds horse. I was working for Shug McGahee at the time. We were running in the Flower Bowl when it was at Belmont. My dad and his team had the favorite in a filly called Desita, but I worked with a filly called War Flag that was Mr. Joe Allen's, and she was my baby from the time she came in to our barn. And coming down the lane, she nosed out my dad's horse, and probably, I was going bananas, but the most exciting thing about it was the first person to greet me on the racetrack and say congratulations and give me a big hug was my dad, because he just knew, how much time and effort, my team had put in with this filly, and he was so graceful in defeat. But I think that probably is one of my fondest memories. It was bittersweet for him, but it took me to Del Mar to, go to the Breeders' Cup because it was a win and you're in, and Shug let me go. So I would say that's probably, one of my fondest memories.
Showing him how it's done, right?
Yeah, he could learn something new.
I would say the unexpected moments are my favorites. So remembering when Discreet Lover won the Jockey Club Gold Cup at 45-1. No, I didn't cash a ticket, but the energy you felt that day at Belmont in the winner's circle, or Keen Ice here defeating American Pharaoh, such an iconic moment. Of course, nobody wanted to see American Pharaoh to lose, but to be there in that moment and experience that thrill and see, the wonderful partners of Donegal Racing getting to enjoy that moment. So when you have unexpected moments that kind of level things out and show us all that horse racing, the races are run on the track, not on paper, and that everybody can experience the highest highs of the game. That's what gives me the biggest thrills.
And for me, I would have to go with when Justify won the Preakness. The Preakness is one of my favorite races in the world. And if you guys recall, it was absolutely horrid rain and mud up to your knees. And during the race, you couldn't even see the horses. So I was lucky enough to actually be on the infield, right at the finish line. And you can't really see the television, so you're just listening to the call. And out of nowhere, here they come around the far turn, and they're coming for home, and it's just fog. And they just come out of the fog, racing towards the finish line, and then he hits the wire and wins the race. And I was right there, and it was so cool and surreal, because I never got to experience that from that perspective. Usually you're on the main side or watching on television, and to be there and see it for yourself with your own eyes was one of the most amazing memories that I will cherish for the rest of my life.
We talk a lot about fans and owners, the important participants of this sport, and bringing new fans, new owners in. And Naj, maybe starting with you on this one, what are ways that we can bring new fans, new owners who invest into this sport?
Yeah, it's certainly a key, and I think we can't shy away that we have a betting product, and it's an excellent betting product with data and information that people can dive into. I always think of handicapping as one big puzzle. And sometimes I don't wonder that we should be advertising at puzzle conventions with Will Cross and the New York Times. But, it's such an aspect in bringing in new fans and cultivating those fans into becoming gamblers. Because at least for my family, and maybe others up here as well, my uncle started as a gambler, transitioned to becoming a farm owner, transitioned to breeding. And it was that first early exposure. So how can we go about recruiting and finding people and introducing them to the gambling aspect? And sports betting, as grown in such a way that it doesn't have negative connotations. If you watch basketball or football, in the early 2000s, you couldn't discuss what the line was. Now it's openly being discussed in fantasy sports. So I think we should take advantage of that, especially in horse racing with all the information and access that we have to recruiting and maturing fans into becoming bettors and more growth.
From kind of a different perspective, I think I can speak for myself, but social media is becoming such a big thing, especially for the younger generation. And there's so many people my age that are just unaware of horse racing in general. So creating a bigger presence in the day-to-day lives of people on social media, I think is really important. But not only that, but creating experiences at the racetrack to try to get those people who maybe have never been to a horse race, bring them to the track, get them to have an experience, maybe just at the chute, you get to pet one of the ponies, you know what I mean? And that's something that you can create and you can grasp it, and then you can share that experience and create an environment like that for a younger generation, I think would be awesome.
I love both of those ideas. And the one thing that I always do when we have somebody new to come to the races is try to encourage them to start a $10 show parlay. I always say, let's go to the paddock, let's see the horses, pick out the one that looks like LeBron James, looks like Tom Brady, looks like Shaquille O'Neal, and that's your athlete, right? And it gives somebody the opportunity to almost feel like they have some ownership. Because for me, the thing that, Elinor discussed, turning for home, you hear Justify's name called. It's the top of the stretch to the wire that makes everybody's heart beat, right? And that's why we're, all here for that thrill. The animals are incredible. They have the competitive nature. And if you can get somebody to feel, it's different than maybe what we do in our normal day-to-day lives. And so I always encourage, okay, $10 show parlay, it's your cost of admission, one less beer, one less of this, one less, Starbucks tomorrow, but you also, get to really be involved and feel the experience.
And Patrick, did you find when you were encouraging your friends from college to come in and come enjoy Del Mar that there was maybe a little bit of a negative connotation? How did they view racing as an entertainment industry?
Yeah, so I think when I talked to, especially my friends when they were getting into the sport, they know racing as the Kentucky Derby and two other races that they can't remember the name of. They're like, one's in Maryland and one might be in Belmont or one in New York. And so they're also intrigued by it, I would say. They certainly are like, on my bucket list would be go to the Kentucky Derby, almost like saying on my bucket list I'd want to go to Mykonos, something of that nature. And so it's not something that's sustainable or sustained from their perspective. And I think a little bit of that is the lack of a little bit of diversity in the sport. And so, there is a thought that the sport is, for, and I would say, by the way, I benefit from this as well, for, older, rich, Caucasian individuals, right? And so that's also something that is somewhat tough for somebody trying to get in the sport as a younger individual. So that is certainly the thought. When I think about getting new fans into the game, I think I take a lot of what you guys just said and kind of break it down to fun, ease, and perception. And so we just got to make it a lot more fun. I mean, go to Topgolf. I mean, it's a crappy product. It's crappy golf clubs, but they're absolutely crushing it because they're taking an entertainment aspect to something that's pretty novel, which is the concept of golf. Look what we have in front of us. It's absolutely incredible. When you get people out to the sport, they have the time of their lives. So we got to make this place a lot more fun. How do we create a better experience? How can we make it fun in between races? There's 25 minutes in between races. What are we doing? We're just sitting there. Yes, we can talk. Let's get off our phones. But there's a lot of other things we could do. So that certainly is something I think a lot about. I think ease, getting my friends into the sport. They had to get fingerprints. Like, why did they have to get fingerprints to become an owner? I'm sure you guys have all experienced that in different states as well. I mean, that's just something that resonates in my head as an experience we had. But becoming an owner is also not easy. Shona from my racehorse talked a lot about regulatory issues yesterday for becoming an owner, even as a microshare owner. And so we got to make it easier from that perspective as well. And then you talked about this, so perception. So talked a little bit about diversity. I think there can't be anything more important than that, certainly. We should emulate what all the other best-in-class sports are doing nowadays. And then the other thing in perception, and I think this is the biggest thing in my own perspective, is just horse health. And the biggest thing that you think about when you talk about horse racing with any new person is, hey, didn't that thing happen out west a couple years ago? You know, do they take care of animals? Why do they have those sticks? Why do those, you know, little individuals or jockeys have those sticks carried with them while they're riding horses? All those little questions, we all know the answers in this room of how well taken care of these horses are and how beautiful these animals are. But it's something that we need to figure out how to address at scale. And I don't think we have at this point. And that's why Anne, talking yesterday from HISA, I think, depending on your own perspective of it, and I'm certainly a supporter, is a big, big push forward in this industry, and I think it will have a huge impact for hopefully many years to come.
And piggybacking off of that, we do hear a lot of talk about things that are perhaps wrong in our industry, but there are positive programs and there are changes that are being made. As members of the next generation, what are some of the positive changes that you've seen or you would like to see within the industry?
I mean, from an educational perspective, Amplify has done a fantastic job of trying to educate the public on what actually goes on in racing and also the professions that are within racing and the opportunities that exist within it. Horse racing is an international, amazing sport where you can access at any level. And not only that, but you can see individual participants within horse racing taking to the likes of TikTok and Instagram and trying to be educational as well, trying to be more relatable. And I think the biggest, plus is the TAA and New Vocations and several other retired racehorse projects. I think it's really important for us as an industry to show what we do for the horses in their second careers and their retirements. That's been really important, and I think we've done a great job, but there's always more to be done, so looking forward to that in the future.
Yes, to echo what Elinor just said, thoroughbred aftercare is where our importance needs to be. It's making sure and we can educate the public that we take care of our athletes from the time they're a foal to their second careers and when they go on throughout their complete lives. Because a lot of the misconceptions that we receive as an industry is, oh, what happens, I saw this bad incident, this bad story, and that's not the case. I know around the country we're ramping up our efforts in per start fees and assessment fees when you're making claims to make sure that it's going towards thoroughbred aftercare. And we have to relay that as an industry and through our television coverage, which has been so great, in making sure that the public knows and the wider interest audiences that we do take care of our equine athletes to the best of our capabilities.
I'll be quicker here, but I think certainly HISA, I think, is a big push forward. Again, a governing body. There's no other sport that doesn't have a governing body that unifies, across the country. Certainly horse health, I think, is another thing that has come a long way. You think about the track reports that we're now seeing from Saratoga and the data, as well as, many of the tracks out west and obviously across the country. So that's certainly a huge, huge step forward. And then I think we have, I was talking a lot about this, but we have done a great job of improving the experience. Tony, President Naira yesterday talked a little bit and made a joke about the smoke machine. I mean, that is funny, but it matters. Like if you go to any sporting event, there's a smoke machine. So why not get a smoke machine? So honestly, something funny that I do is I keep a notes of every sporting event I go to, and I just pick up ideas as we could adopt this in horse racing. And so this is a long list of notes. If you guys want to be shared with it, I'm happy to share it with you. But I think experience, certainly horse health, and just having a governing body.
I like what you guys talk about with off-track thoroughbreds and that sort of thing. I think that every individual in this room can make a difference when it comes to perception in the thoroughbred industry. I love to take people who maybe have a differing opinion than me to the backside to actually meet a horse. We all know they've got personalities. They're all different. Some of them really want the snuggles. Some of them really want to bite your head off. And I think that showing people and giving access, that's one thing that everybody in here can do. And if you can make a difference with one person, I think that that is something that will, lead our industry into the right direction. We're all ambassadors for this sport because at the end of the day, it's important to everybody here and, obviously very important to all of us up here. They'll click it back on for you.
I can't agree more. I think one of the first things I do for a new owner when I go and bring them to the track is bring them back to the backside. Just having them lay their eyes on horses and how well they're taken care of, it totally changes the perception of what's going on in this industry. And so I just want to echo what you said. It's access, bringing people back. The hard part is scalability, which I struggle with in my head. So how do you bring the masses to the backside? Do you have them walk through the barn area before they come to the grandstand? I don't know. It's something I've thought about. So I think it's really important. It's just I struggle a little bit with how you scale it.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, and that's just why I encourage, and having worked for a trainer, I know that it can be challenging to create that scalability, but I think that, if you can empower every person anytime that you get an opportunity to say, hey, take your friend, hey, take your friend, and if we each take a friend, we've got 150 people then. If every single person here takes one person to meet a racehorse, 150 more people, will understand what we all feel.
And you guys have kind of perfectly segued into the next conversation, which is about aftercare. How we as an industry have come a long way. There's still a lot more work to do, and Gary and Julie have asked me to share a little bit about my experience with aftercare too, because it's obviously something that's really important to me. And we heard from Stacy Rogers with the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and the importance of focusing on accredited organizations and highlighting the need for that. And I think as members of the next generation, it's my opinion that aftercare should be the forefront of the conversation as far as bringing people into the sport, because the first question I always get is, oh, but horses end up in a bad situation after they're done racing. They're discarded. Oh, horses are not looked after properly, or they're just treated as money. They're not treated as animals. And my mom and I, for those of you who don't know, run an aftercare organization accredited by the TAA called Racing for Home, and we're on a small scale, and we rely on fundraising to operate, and sometimes it's even tough for us to rehome horses because there's a negative stereotype with horses coming from the racetrack. So I think that education and awareness is such a huge piece of it. And just the other day at the track, we had Thoroughbred Aftercare Day at Saratoga, which is a huge step in the right direction. And so for all of us here, is there something as far as aftercare is concerned that you've either been involved in or you think has really done a good job promoting that conversation within our sport?
Certainly, as the executive director of New York Thoroughbred Breeders, we take aftercare responsibility with a great deal, and our organization yearly makes donations to TAA accredited organizations. We, help keep on getting the word out, the importance, and it's about, encouraging and really informing owners, wagerers, fans, all that we all can do towards thoroughbred aftercare in support and making sure that our equine athletes are well taken care of.
Recently, I've started to volunteer with the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. We send many of our, horses that need second careers to New Vocations, which, rehomes horses for a second career. Unfortunately, not necessarily always talked about, are horses that something happens and they actually can't have a second career, and they need to be pasture ornaments, and that is what Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation works most specifically with, are those horses that actually don't have the ability to go on and be a hunter jumper or a dressage horse or, whatever, and they work with the prison systems and, basically have farms that are associated with the prisons, and the prisoners work with these horses. For me, it's twofold of very rewarding. One, for the horses. These would be your high-risk horses, in my opinion. And two, also for the people, because I think that working with a thoroughbred can be the most therapeutic thing in the world.
Yeah, I spent some time at the Secretariat Center in Lexington, Kentucky, and it's an amazing example of how the retraining process occurs. And they also allow people to come out to see what they do, which is another way to invite a behind-the-scenes look. And I think something that's really important is pulling at the heartstrings and creating these stories about the horses themselves, but also their previous owners. For example, while I was there was a filly that had been retired from the track, and her previous owners came out all the time to visit her and follow her progress, transitioning into her second career. And it's stories like that that I think are really important to be told and shown on like a huge scale. So that's my...
I think to Elinor's point, I think the onus is a lot on us as owners. I mean, yes, we will make sure Hot Rod Charlie's taken care of, but also Tell Me I'm Pretty, who ran for 4,000 at Fauner Park, we know exactly where she is today. So I put a lot of stake on each and every owner to say, hey, if you truly care about this industry, most importantly, each and every one of the horses that you own, follow it. It doesn't take he or she, not it, because it doesn't take that. It's not that hard with technology nowadays to follow where your horse is.
And one more question before we open it up for some questions from the crowd. If you were suddenly named the czar of racing, I know it's a question I think that we all kind of dread and maybe secretly would love to act on as well. What are some of the things that you would be doing?
I'll start because I think Patrick and I might have the same answer. When we run racing partnerships, getting people fingerprinted is a huge struggle, and so
in every state, by the way.
In every state. And I know that there is the National Racing Compact, which is helpful. But if we could just have one license, a commissioner, similar to what the majority of professional sports industries have. The NFL has it, the NBA has it, the NHL has a commission. If there was a commission and a commissioner, I think is very important too.
Yes. Well, first, I would not allow Todd Pletcher to enter Life is Good Whitney next weekend. It's funny, Doug talks a lot about this, but, in all seriousness, again, I go back to the experience part of things. And, Doug is, if you ever met him, he's an amazing individual and cares a lot about his horses and is very, very fun as well. And one of the crazy ideas that he has always had is, put a water park in the infield. Now, I do not think that's a great idea, and I have told that to his face, and let's put a little riff in the family. No, it's been fine. But I think, again, I would focus a ton on the experiential aspect of it, because we can talk about the handle all day. We all know how great the handle's been since, COVID kind of took place, and the industry's done a great job of keeping this sport going at a time when it was very, very tough. But if we just focus on the handle, if we just focus on gambling, we're going to lose out on the long-term blood of this industry. And so the key is, as we've talked a lot about today, is focusing on horses and, in my opinion, fans, because fans become owners. Owners are technically gamblers. So again, I go back to let's fill the funnel at the top so we can have this amazing industry be around for many, many years to come.
Okay, I would want to focus on educational outreach. As I'm sure a lot of you guys have been to Kentucky, being in Lexington or Louisville, you're surrounded by horse racing, it's the capital. Whereas if you're in LA or, New York City, perhaps, it's not the main, area. I think in these big cities, they're becoming more and more urbanized and less exposed to agricultural aspects, especially with horses. I think it'd be really cool to have like an educational outreach program with local schools, maybe even universities, to work on having programs or even certificates to work with the racetrack to try to get younger people exposed to the horses and the industry as a whole for like potential professional opportunities, but also just making that connection with the horse. I mean, it goes so far, and it's crazy when you see these little kids touch a horse for the first time, their eyes light up, and it's amazing. And I would really want to focus on that if I was the czar of racing.
I agree with everybody's ideas that have been said. I'm going to pivot back to gambling and go to coordinated post times between racetracks and fixed odds wagering. If we get that on the national scale, I think it would be a tremendous opportunity, because when you bring somebody new to a racetrack and you have to explain to them, yes, those are your current odds, but those are going to change, and they might even change when we open up the gates and the horses are being run on the track. So I think if we can expand fixed odds, it'll be such a tremendous opportunity to introduce more and more people to the sport. And as well, when we get racetracks to work together in a coordination of schedule, stakes races, and post time, so everybody has an opportunity to watch every race from every track in every area, I think it'll do tremendous growth to the game.
All right, some terrific insight and stories from our panelists here. Do we have any questions?